In the world of PC gaming, there are a lot of gaming keyboards out there. From bigger brands like Razer, SteelSeries, and Logitech to smaller brands like ones you'd find on Amazon for like 40 bucks, which are actually pretty great keyboards for the price, by the way. And now keyboards these days are getting smaller and smaller, with the most popular in gaming being the 60% keyboards like the Ducky keyboards and the Onpro 2. But if you want to go even smaller and focus purely on gaming and maybe even productivity, you can use something like a gaming keypad like the Razer Tartarus V2 that I've reviewed here in the past. These are great for playing games or editing videos or photos or what have you when you just want to set aside your normal keyboard and focus on your keyboard hand and what keys you'll need to reach. Razer's got a few, Logitech has one, and Amazon nowadays has a ton, but have you ever seen a keypad like this? Big shout out and thank you to Azeron or Azeron. I actually, come to think of it, don't know how the name's pronounced after all this time. My apologies, guys, but now is the time for me to finally tell you guys about this keypad. Like, look at this thing. I've never ever seen anything quite like it. What makes it so unique, obviously, is the shape. Instead of the keys being laid flat for you to reach and adjust this way, it's more of a full kind of almost 360 motion for at least a couple of your fingers to reach and hit certain keys. Instead of reaching your finger out just a little bit further to reach a higher key, you instead just kind of shoot it upward and you hit whatever key you need to hit, as well as the other keys that are just right by your finger, so you barely have to move your fingers to hit different keys. And these are mechanical keys. I don't know what type, but they have a very, like, I just want to just listen to this how satisfying that sounds. Feels and sounds so nice, like it's very light. This is really well made, and the crazy thing is it's 3D printed. This is a small team of 3 people working together to not only make the software, but they made the hardware, they did all the wiring, they did all the 3D printing to make this thing. It's insane what they've done to put their work into this. And it's all this little independent operation. That's amazing. This thing has been a work in progress for some time now, and seeing how far they've come in the past year or so that I've been talking back and forth with them, it's insane. It's like, when I first received this thing, the only way to program the keys was to use Joy to key. But eventually they did come out with their own software that is regularly updated, and it works way better. Now, if you're used to companies like Razer or Logitech where you simply plug a product in, download the software, and then program to your heart's content, it's not quite as simple as those. There are a couple of extra steps that you'll need to take, but they're not that complicated. It's just a couple steps, and then you're all set up. Their website has all the software, firmware, and instructions you need to get set up. It took me just a couple of minutes. When you go into the software, it's actually really fleshed out and full of options. For something that comes from a small, again, 3-man team, that's incredible. This thing even has profiles, so you can switch between profiles for whatever game you might be playing. So if you want to set this up specifically for something like Overwatch or Rainbow Six, you can do that. Maybe you're playing that new Final Fantasy XIV expansion, you can set up all your skills and attacks to the different keys on here. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is that you're not going to find a keypad like this out in the market just readily available right now. So given that this is basically the only option in this form factor, in this shape, and the fact that it's independently made, it's probably going to be a little more crude than something you might be used to out of a big production line factory company like Razer. At the bottom of the keypad are a bunch of these little screws, and inside the box you'll receive a small Allen wrench, which you will need to move these screws around. The reason you might need to do so is to you can actually adjust where these are going to be going. So if your fingers are a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, you can actually use that tool to adjust these screws to adjust how near or far these things are from your fingers, so you can either reach or not really reach. There's no vertical adjustment for this part of it, but there is a horizontal adjustment, so this can either go in or out. And then there's also the adjustment here, and you can just loosen or tighten, and then once you find the perfect fit for how you want your hand shape to be, you just tighten those back up, and they're locked in position for how you want. It's seriously like one of the most ultimate customizable gaming keypads out there as far as comfort and hand positioning. If I feel, oh, my pinky would probably feel a little more comfortable out more, or my thumb is a little too far, I can't quite reach, I'll just bring that in. You can perfectly set it up for you, and that's awesome. I've looked at a lot of these game pads out there, and the only ones I've seen that have even a kind of thumbstick thing are the ones I've seen from Razer and Logitech. There are probably other ones out there from smaller brands, but most of those small brands on Amazon just have keys and no stick. This has an actual, for real controller-like thumbstick that is much more comfortable for movement than, for example, the Tartarus. This is a lot easier and a lot more natural feeling than that 8-directional clicky thing that the Tartarus has. Now, the cool thing is there are different options available for this. I actually changed out a couple parts that Azeron had sent me. The thumbstick portion as well as the palm rest were different when I received this item. The palm rest was a little bit more rough, like these 3D printing lines that you see here, but it was just a little too high, a little too awkward. This is a lower, flatter one that for me feels more natural. And then on top of that, the thumbstick in there was black, and then it had one little clicky button that you can program. This particular one, the reason it's different, not only the color, but the button here. It's not just a clicky button, it's actually directional. Instead of just a button right there, you have the ability to move that around in different directions. And they also have a compact option now, which is not something they had when they first reached out to me, where instead of having these 6 switches that you reach up to press, there are 4 flat buttons on each of these finger positionings. And then not only that, one thing that I rarely ever see and have not seen from companies like Razer and Logitech is something that I got asked a lot of questions about in my Razer Tartarus V2 video: is there a left-handed option? And the answer is yes. Each of these, the regular size and the compact one, both come in a left-handed option as well. So if you're a lefty and you've been looking for a gaming keypad that might be a little more comfortable for you and is customizable like this, there's an option for you now. They also come in various colors. You can choose the color that you want when you order. Now, unfortunately, and this is poor timing on my part, when I go and look there, I do see that they are sold out of all 4 of their keypads at the moment, but they do post a date for when those are going to be available again within 1 to 2 weeks of availability coming up. So you can keep an eye on their product page, and then when you see, hey, on this date it's going to be available, I better keep an eye on it and then I'll buy it. I'd say look at this as a unique, more of a boutique item. You're not going to find this anywhere else. I highly recommend it, but with some caveats. It does take some getting used to. It took me a while to get used to it after using the Tartarus and just regular keyboards for gaming. It does take some time to get adjusted. Maybe it'll take a little bit less time for you, and maybe I'm just a little bit slow in the brain, but the fact is it works really well. You know me, if you know this channel, you know I like to push things that are smaller, less known, obscure, independent, and really push those out there for you guys to know about, because a lot of people maybe just don't know about them. And I think this is something that should be known about. Azeron or Azeron, those guys all deserve support, and I think you guys should check them out.